Superman 2025 is likely to be well received and enjoyed by virtually everybody. The fact that it's trying to be more PG in its tone this time around is actually a masterstroke because after decades of kind of PG-13, kind of risque, kind of more edgy material, rolling back and trying to be a bit more childlike is actually new and interesting, and tonally in place with something like Superman. The film's full of crowd-pleasing moments and cannot be described as anything less than very entertaining. But there are also a few things people are going to be annoyed by and walk away from the film disliking, or at least not knowing how they feel about it. And they're right to, but it's hard to parse out why exactly we feel that way, so thus, this video will do that. There's no way to discuss these issues at length without spoilers, so be aware going forward. The biggest thing we can say right off the bat that audiences are likely never going to fully like, and that is arguably the biggest flaw of the film, is that they changed the backstory of his Kryptonian parents. And that is very bold and very original. There have been versions of that, but there hasn't been an iteration of Superman where that kind of backstory is done and performed in that way, with that kind of consequences. And in a sense, it's very interesting and deeply powerful because it makes you re-examine everything about the Superman origin, but it still isn't so different that the core character can't exist. By having it then be taken by Lex Luthor and turned into a kind of canceling operation to smear his reputation, the film presents a modern, super interesting dilemma for Superman that stands a chance of legitimately damaging him in a way that he's never been damaged before. It can't be understated how interesting and daring that was. But on the other hand, it might have been just a bit too daring and interesting. By changing the backstory so that his Kryptonian parents told him to conquer the Earth and take many wives to revive the Kryptonian bloodline, we almost get a little too grim and a little too serious. A big part of the Superman mythos is that his alien parents are also basically good people, or at least good in their intentions for sending him. And changing that in this version almost deviates too much from the formula. And more pressingly, the film arguably suffers because it introduces this fascinating new wrinkle that has it taken advantage of so brilliantly by Lex Luthor, but then it never has a full follow-through on that idea. That was arguably Superman's big emotional conflict for the film, which is how to reconcile his sense of being now that one of his tentpoles has been knocked out of place. And the people of Metropolis were having an arc as well, because the people of Metropolis were character in this film. The people who cared about Superman were character in this film. And they were going on an arc too. But there was never a moment where it felt they fully got back to or had developed through the arc that this had caused. Superman just got caught up in the climax events and kind of addressed the feeling, but didn't fully address it. Ideally, there would have been a scene where Superman makes a declaration like he does in the film, but in public where people can see him, so his reputation can be rehabilitated. Because we, the audience, know Superman is not a bad guy in that way, but the characters in the film didn't. And by never fully redeeming him in their eyes, they left that plot thread dangling, and they left that thread unsatisfied. The film sets up the great premise with that first third, but then it doesn't follow through on it emotionally to create a greater sense of catharsis. The central thesis and central struggle of the film, can Superman regain his idealism after it's been shaken, is never truly followed through on, and we can sense it even if we can't put it into words exactly. And that's going to be why people's reception to this is not totally even, because the film isn't totally even. If we're honest, probably a big reason for approaching this angle is because they want to cut off the Kryptonian backstory as a source for stories. They're trying to launch a new cinematic universe. There are a lot of angles to explore. And by villainizing the Krypton characters, we seem to be trying to snip the branches to prevent the characters from being explored too much, to force people to rely on non-Kryptonian characters and properties to tell their stories. And that may also be a masterstroke and be proven to be a great decision over time. But right now, it's... In truth, we're probably not going to really care that much long term. The film is going to be successful, and this will probably never really be mentioned again. In ways, it's too dark to mention, because no one wants to linger on the reality of the people behind it. But hey, if we don't have to think about it, we don't have to think about it. Overall, looking at this whole situation, the evil Kryptonian backstory seems like an idea that would have worked much better as an Elseworld story, a spin-off, a side story, an alternate universe, not as a central aspect of a brand new essential film incarnation. It deviates just a little too much from the key formula, and the formula is a big part of why things succeed. All it's done is provide an interesting section of a film. The long term, it's probably poisoned a lot of story possibilities. But oh well, Superman is a character that's always getting adapted somewhere, and gets a new film franchise every 15 years or so. So if people have a problem with this version of the character, you just have to wait a while, you'll get another one. He's never going away. And isn't that nice? Because even when the formula isn't perfectly recreated, the character still fulfills his function a lot of the time, and is very enjoyable.